Hello, good morning and good afternoon for just a few of us hitting the East Coast at noon here. Thanks for joining FSMA Friday for this month. We got a great lineup today. My name's Aaron Bolshaw, moderator for FSMA Fridays. For those of you joining, maybe for the first time, FSMA Fridays is an ongoing monthly industry update for food and beverage facility operators, QA operators, safety, compliance professionals. And Safety Chain Software teams up with the Atchison Group to bring you guidance and thought leadership on a host of topics revolving around the Food Safety Modernization Act. We're going to review some concepts today around internal auditing, rounding out our fall of audits in conjunction with our sister webinar series, Beyond Compliance. And today we've got the 3 C's of internal auditing: communication, culture, and coordination. And I am very excited to have Lacey Kazee with us today. Before we get started, just want to make sure everyone knows we're on mute. You're on mute, we're not. But so you can hear us, we can't hear you, but we want to hear from you. So when you have a question, use that questions panel to the right of you in the Go to Webinar panel. That will allow you to give us some questions. We're going to save some time at the end of today's presentation to go through some of those. Now, we do have 30 minutes scheduled today. We're going to be very flexible with our time, though, because I think we've got we'll have some questions. So for those of you that have to go at 12:30 or at the top of the hour, no problem. But with that, I want to introduce today's presenter. Lacey Kazee is the Director of Food Safety with the Atchison Group, with over 15 years of food manufacturing experience from a lot of different entities, small, medium, and large: Kellogg's, Nestle, Abbott. She's got a really interesting perspective on what small operators and large operators, what your challenges are and how to excuse me, approach those. Very varied background in food sectors: meat processing, dairy, ready to eat, snacks, confections, shelf stable, you name it. She's got a lot of experience there. So and some interesting specialties as well. So I know the Atchison Group is definitely lucky to have her. She's out of Virginia. She went to Virginia Tech, Food Science and Technology. Lacey, welcome to FSMA Friday.
Thank you, Aaron. I'm very happy to be here.
Great, great. Well, we're going to use a little different format today. Normally, the Atchison Group, we have a presentation and you go slide by slide, but we're going to do question and answer format. So I'm going to be asking some questions, and you'll answer them through this format. And then we'll get to the audience's Q's and A's later. So excited about that. First, why don't we, if you would, we always like to start out with just sort of the update for FSMA. Can you walk us through just a couple of the updates and highlight what's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. We wanted to let you all know that the FDA has announced the virtual public meeting for those retail and also producers who are doing e-commerce, as far as foods that are ordered online and being directly delivered to their customers. That virtual public meeting is going to be October the 19th through the 21st, and the link is here, so definitely make sure you sign up for that if you are one of those providers. Also, we wanted to let everyone know that the winners of the Traceability Challenge have been announced. It was a great contest for the solutions with the software, and you can actually go onto the FDA website to see the different companies that won in that contest. And there's also a webinar next week on the 28th planned, just to go through some of those solutions for companies who are looking for traceability software.
Great, yeah, that was going on. That's been going on for the last few months. I remember when they announced that. That's I love that innovative approach where they're, it's not necessarily crowdsourcing, but they are calling on the marketplace in a broader aspect to help with these technological endeavors. So that's That's really nice. So cool. Thanks, Lacey. I appreciate that. And we're just going to jump into the 3 C's. I'll just kind of cover what we're going to go over. Really just going to go through the keys to a successful internal auditing program. I know a lot of folks, especially our customers, they're getting some of those, non-announced stuff coming through now. We've got internal audits. We got external audits. This is focused on the internal audit, really. So the who, what, where, why, how, and when. Just we're focusing on tips for success about conducting audits, post-audit value. What are you going to do after that audit? Don't just like leave it in that binder, or maybe you've got some software, right? And then the importance really of those 3 C's. So with that, Lacey, I'd love to ask just the first question off the top here. And it really just kind of why, right? Why do food and beverage companies conduct internal audits? What are some reasons and maybe some benefits there?
Well, for most companies who are certified under a GFSI scheme, such as SQF or BRC, it is required. It's part of their food safety standard. However, for a lot of companies, if they're not under that type of certification, doing an internal audit program really gives a good health check on how their quality and food safety system is running. The culture comes in here because it can be a great tool when you're out there and you're doing internal audits to talk about food safety and to really understand if your employees know what does food safety mean? Why are we doing these things? And some of those benefits can really be shown because you're out there and you're finding gaps in your systems and you're able to document them and understand what the root cause is. You can put in your corrective action plans and really find some of the training issues or maybe food safety culture gaps that you might have within your system. And those can be very helpful in your external audits.
Yeah, we see a lot of people really lining some of these up to help them even with those external, if you are GFSI and so forth. There's timing to this as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, who, right? Like, so if you kind of just take a look at it, who should be involved in these? Not just like what companies, but inside that plant, who should be concerned with this?
Well, most of the time, as we all know, quality is running the internal audit program, but it's very important to get multidisciplinary folks from different departments involved. And I've seen some really great, robust internal auditing programs that include auditors from other departments that are not just quality. Now, it's very important to make sure that you do have a lead auditor who has been certified in internal auditing or has years of experience and knows how to do it. And they can train their internal auditing team to go out there. And that way you've got that cross functionality going. When you're coordinating those audits, it's great to have a fresh pair of eyes so you can get someone from the maintenance or the operations department to audit a different department. You have quality that's out there auditing all of the quality systems, but then you can get someone from another function to actually audit the quality system. It's never a good idea to have an auditor audit their own function. So it's super important to get different people from different departments who want to see that improvement in the culture, who want to get out there and change some of the gaps that might be in the food safety and quality system. And that can be tricky at times if the resources are not available, but it's very good to get out there and use that time, especially when you've got people that are able to help with the quality system audits. I've actually seen in the past using sister facility employees, bring them over from a different site and have them come and audit your quality system, and then you go over and audit theirs. And that's a great tool to be able to learn from best practices, and you're also not auditing your own program. So that's a really great tip.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that cross-pollination, getting the fresh eyes is super important because if you start to feel, and so if you're one of the certified auditors, if you're one of the individuals that's on the phone with us today that do these, and you
Mhm.
feel that you're kind of checking the same corner every time, you're doing this, you're
Yep.
going through the checklist. If you feel like, wow, I just did the same thing I did last time, chances are you might be missing some stuff. Those fresh eyes are really important.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest things of coordination, because if you're documenting and you're looking at your past audits, let's say from the previous year, when you're setting up your next year's program, that way you're not just looking at the same thing every time. Even if you are the only auditor on site, as with the smaller companies, you can look at different facets of the same quality system each time, so you're not getting into that repeat kind of tunnel vision.
Yeah, yeah. Well, with that though, you know, you got to go into it with a plan. So, you know, what are some of the steps needed to plan that out and execute a successful audit?
I think coordinating using a type of document like an internal audit schedule is very important, because not only does it help you plan out your year, you can manage your audits through planned dates based off of what's happening in your facility at that time. So one of the biggest things that I learned was not to put all of my heavy audits, or the ones that would take longer, during the months that I was preparing for an external audit. That can be a huge gap in your system, because if you're worried about trying to get all of the really intense internal audits done, but also getting ready for your external audit at the same time, you're not doing yourself any favor. So one of the things I highly suggest is, if you have a scheduled external audit and you know that it's going to come in a certain month of the year, schedule your internal audits to be light and to also focus on preparing for the external audits. Do a double duty almost, where you are checking off through your programs in order to be ready for the external certification audit, going through your prerequisite programs, doing all of the checklists, and you're also getting out there on the floor and you're preparing your employees. One of the other things that I think is very important is to communicate. So once you set that schedule for the year, send it out to your teams. Let the managers, the supervisors, the line leaders know, hey, I'm planning on coming to visit you in this quarter or in this month. And you don't necessarily have to give them a date, but at least that way they can see it coming, and it lets a little bit of that intrepidation go, right? So that's the culture around that internal audit. You don't want it to be a negative thing. You want them to be prepared and be ready for it. And in creating that audit plan, you can have that approved by management. And anytime something that needs to change, because hey, it is a facility, it is production, you can sign off on that change and document it. It does not have to be set in stone.
Yeah, and you've already hit off two of the two
Sorry,
for us, right? We've got communicate. I'm hearing culture, so we're already digging in there. Those are fantastic. Do you know, like, if you look at some of the Atchison Group's customers, are they doing an annual schedule, or is it quarterly? Is it a half of a year? Because you know, you kind of got to stay flexible sometimes. But what are you seeing is some of the more common cadences?
in my experience, the best practice that I've seen is to have the entire year planned, but you break it up into quarters. And that way you can be flexible in exactly what you just said. In those instances where something happens, something blows up, you know, you've got a major hold or a recall situation, and you can just move audits over. So I always like to see lighter schedules at the end of the year, so that way if you do need to move those planned audits out, you can, because of something happening.
Got it. Yeah, we got a quick tip too for everyone sort of on the software side. You don't need to pay for things like this, but making a schedule, sometimes like in G Calendar, or if you use Outlook or something like that, you can create a user, make that user's name audit schedule, right? And let people subscribe to that calendar. Now you've got a living document, kind of a linked document to exactly what's going on through the year. And as things change, you don't have to do as much communication. You do still want to make sure everyone understands, hey, there's a change, but you know how everyone is, so little time to read all the messages in the inbox and so forth. You can simply go and reference that calendar.
Yep, absolutely. And what I used to like to do would be to send out a meeting notice when I knew that I was prepared to do that audit in that week. That way you're coordinating with the people who you will need for that audit, because you don't want to be auditing alone, and ask for their time. And it's a little bit of a respect exchange, because you're asking them to work with you. You're not just going to show up and surprise them on it where they might be having an incredibly busy day, and work with them to ensure that they're going to be able to support you in that audit. And that creates some real positive reinforcement.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Love that. All right, so we got some tips there. What about when? Like, so again, this can be all over the place, but there might be some trends you see. When should audits be conducted, Lacey, and like how often? What kind of circumstances are you thinking?
Well, I find that doing at least one internal audit a month keeps you on your schedule, but it also gives you enough time to plan ahead, to prepare, to read your documents or your SOPs beforehand, to read your checklists or your external certification standards beforehand, and have an opening meeting. Then you're able to not only conduct the audit, but give yourself enough time to follow up as well as close out and send out the audit report. Giving yourself an entire month to work on it, you're able to really focus on the importance of what are the findings, the execution of the corrective action, and following up with the area owners so that way they're involved in the process as well.
That's a great tip. I never really thought of it. I kind of always think of like, hey, you do the audit and then that's sort of the end of it. You should
Right.
almost, hey, yeah, the audit happens, but then maybe the following, 3 to 5 days, or just call it a week or so, are then, hey, let's spend time with the follow-ups. What did we learn? We know from GFSI, SQF, they want to see, when you do the external, right, when they come in and you're getting certified and so forth, they want to see that progress. They want to see, hey, they don't expect you to be perfect, right? But that will give the ability to then go and make any changes needed. So give yourself maybe a week after the audit too, to really then formalize the ending of it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very good. All right, so this is interesting. So there was a really interesting TikTok out there that I was sharing with my team, Lacey, and it's a job shop. So it wasn't a food place, and I won't say what it was, but there was a gentleman who was kind of making fun of the inspector coming around. It was a QA person going on the floor, right? And what they would do is they would holler a specific sort of animal sound to let everyone else know on the floor that they were coming around, right? Like, woo. So how do you avoid this? So, ultimately, how do you build positive excitement about an audit instead of having that sort of, that, oh, here comes somebody looking for trouble sort of thing? How do you build that? This is kind of that culture part, right?
It is. And I think that one of the most important things of changing the culture of, oh no, here comes the auditor, or oh no, here comes quality, because we've all dealt with it. I have even had employees out on the floor making specific sounds so people are alerted to my presence. And it's like, come on, guys, I'm not here to beat you up. And I think that talking to people and getting their buy-in while you're doing that audit, because you are letting them know that you're not the enemy, right? So it's really important to come at it with a positive attitude. You're not out there trying to be the police or trying to show a power play. You're trying to actually help them improve their everyday. And I find that talking to people about some of the difficulties that they might have with their line or their equipment or their cleaning tools, you just ask them like, hey, what are your hurdles right now? Why is it not possible to keep this line clean? Or what is the difficulty in completing this pre-op checklist every day and actually following up? And people will open up and talk to you about some of the difficulties. A lot of time it has to do with, well, this piece of equipment is old and it can't be cleaned, or I don't have the right tools, or the state of the facility is always causing cooling water. And if you talk to these people not only about the issue and it being a problem, but the why behind why we can't ignore it, then you really get them engaged and they start to feel like they have a say in it, and they start to feel like their opinion matters. You get those employees that deal with this hardship on a daily basis, they've got some great ideas about how to fix it. And sometimes you can actually use an internal audit report with those findings to help get some of those fixes in there. You can request for capital funds or quality funds to help make these things not an everyday life for these people, because when they see, well, I'm writing this up every day on my pre-op checklist, or I put in a maintenance work order for it and it's not getting fixed, and they need help. So a lot of the times quality can use the internal audit systems to help resolve some of those. And then the people have more of a positive outlook when they see the internal auditor coming.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point. Just kind of pull them into the conversation. Don't just be out there with the big, magnifying glass inspecting
That's
it.
right. And another thing I would definitely suggest is when you are interviewing in your one-on-one, especially with an employee on the floor, talk to their supervisor about what a great job they did dealing with you, because it's not easy. You're sitting there, you're trying to run your line. You've got this auditor who is a part of the company and they're just pestering you with questions. Let their supervisor know, hey, such and such did a great job the other day. Put their name up on the recognition board or whatever the company recognition program is. Maybe give them a lunch coupon or something like that to really thank them for their time and let them know that you really respect and appreciate their input during the audit.
That's a good point. You should be able to give these auditors some tools like a lunch ticket, or like maybe maybe it's just a gift card or something like that.
Just a thank you, right?
Yeah, no kidding. Because you are getting out there, and you can kind of get in the way, and the end of the day, we got to get production, so we got to hit
Exactly right.
All right, so I wanted to just kind of pull people in. We're going to poll the audience real quick, Lacey. And so in just a second, you're going to see a poll jump up on your screen. You can pick as many as you want. And what we're asking is, what best describes your audit management process? We know there's a lot of ways to get this done, right? When you actually put it out on the floor and you go and doing your walk-in, do you have pens and paper, and emails and so forth? I'm trying to get that going. There we go. It should be. Oh, did I just close that? All right, so we got 7% voted. So this is that thing that I was talking about, Lacey, where I was like, okay, it takes a really weird long time for GoToWebinar to actually show it. And so I apologize, and I can't relaunch it either because it's closed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share the results, and I'm going to apologize to everyone. We did get a few people that voted, and for those that didn't, we're going to share results from our previous one. So my apologies. It's one of those cases, Lacey, where you click the button, and I think we've all had this experience, and you have to wait a long time. Well, I clicked the button and didn't know if it actually knew it clicked the button, so I clicked it again. So listen, we do have paper, pens, email still being used, of course. That's a thing. Those big binders, right? The big, huge 3-ring binders. I love seeing the electronic Word documents here, though, Lacey. This is, absolutely the modernization of these facilities. Although I will say we still get pictures back from our customers saying, hey, thanks for taking care of this. We'll get these rooms, some big closet in the back of a warehouse somewhere that are filled with boxes stacked 5 on top of each other and then 20 deep, right? We've seen these rooms before, right?
Oh yeah.
We love taking care of that for our customers as well, getting that out of the way. Like seeing more software in here. Again, it is a super help. It makes you get things done quicker. And then I'll tell you what, auditors, when you get to the external auditors, it provides a lot of confidence in your internal processes as well. So good stuff. Thoughts here, what you're seeing?
It really doesn't surprise me that the lowest is using those standalone management software programs or the big binders. I am a big fan of paper, pens, and email and Word documents myself to put out just a nice report. I have used management software, and a lot of times they end up being, it's almost like double work because I'm out there on the floor and I'm writing my results down. Well, then I have to go and sit down in front of the computer. They can be really great systems when they work well. They can also be a pain when they don't.
Yeah, and that really does, so if you are looking for something like that, make sure you got something that can work on a tablet. You can just put some notes in. You can take some pictures. You
Yes.
can put it in there so that it all becomes a part of that record. That's some keys to finding the solution that will work, because you don't want to apply technology just for the sake of applying technology. You want to make the processes smoother, faster, and the people, right?
Absolutely.
Happier, better
Yep.
tools.
Yeah.
Not
Those iPads out on the floor are the best things that I've ever seen. It's like, wow, that's awesome.
exactly. Cool. Well, we got a couple more questions. This is what I was talking about. We've been asking this question, this exact question. So this lines up. We've got paper,
Mhm.
pens, and then I think what's happening, Lacey, a lot of the times is we're taking the checks on the floor, and then we're going to go and transfer them into a Word document, into a spreadsheet, and then we're going to start emailing those things around. So that's still very commonplace. So,
Yeah. Mhm.
so
And I will say one thing, I found a tip for when you are creating them in the Word document and you're sending them out over email, the best thing to do is still get a signature on that report. So that way, during the closeout meeting, hey, Mr. Manager or Miss Manager, you saw this report, you signed off on it, we agreed to it, and this
yep.
is my final report.
Yeah, and that's part of that, so if you are inclined and you're looking for the software, make sure you have a sign-off process. So
Mhm.
I'll plug safety chain here really quick, but that was a really important part of how we built our software, because we understood you need to be able to say yes, okay. So there is a sign-off in the process for safety
Right.
chain. But you're absolutely right. You can't move on without that signature.
Mhm.
So preparing for audits, we do talk a lot about this a lot, but what are some steps we should include in that prep process?
I think for me, one of the biggest things is pulling the audit results from the last time that same quality subset was audited, looking at the external audit results for that quality subsystem, and preparing all of your documentation, reading through the policies, especially in the case where you have corporate policies that are being brought down to the facility level. Those can change without people on the floor being aware of it. And that kind of helps you hone in on the detail of that quality system where you're really going to focus on. So you can go and pull and ensure not only that the previous audit findings are closed out to ensure that your CAPA was in fact effective, but also you're looking to make sure that you're not just doing a repeat. And it gives you new ideas to go to, okay, this section of the policy last time, let's go down and look at this section. And once you have prepared a set of questions, you don't necessarily want all of them. It gives you a tool to be able to go out to the floor or to the department owner, whoever owns the process, and interview them. And you will be able to kind of have a segue into the questioning. Once you get down into that path, you're going to come up with all the other questions as you are going through the process together. I highly recommend conducting a opening meeting and asking the department head or the manager or supervisor of that system to attend. So that way they're aware, hey, this is what we're going to focus on during the audit. We're looking at this policy and we're going to go out to the floor during this time. So that way they're being communicated with, so they know that they can line up resources for you, that people are available and aware that you're coming to conduct the audit. Scheduling the time, I think, is a very important thing to do. And you have to keep in mind, hey, we're in production, things happen, right? So they may come to you on that day, an hour before, 10 minutes before, and say, hey, I'm really sorry, I just cannot attend. I had this thing blow up. At that time, you can either reschedule with them or ask them, well, are you okay if I go and do the audit on my own? Depending on what they want you to do, you can always reschedule it, or you can just ask that they come to the closing meeting. And that's really important for being able to communicate the results for what you found while you were doing the audit, while you were going through the documentation. And it gives a good discussion setting to be able to go back and forth about, why was this a finding? Let's talk about that. And then you can also set the severity severity levels. You can have good discussions with people, and that really helps to create that culture of let's get this fixed, let's get it right, because you're listening to their buy-in. You also definitely want to ask for the resources if the manager or supervisor is not available, to have someone walk with you, because going out there on the line by yourself, you want to have someone who is able to answer your questions if you're not sure about the way a process is working. I've had, unfortunately, in my experience, a finding that in my mind, well, this isn't right at all. But once I was able to sit down with the owners of that system and they explained it to me, I said, oh, well, actually, okay, I understand why this works because you explained it to me. So if they're there with you out on the line to be able to walk you through that, to understand the process, it makes it go a lot smoother. Definitely want to pull, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that speaks to sort of that culture too. If you're willing on that system operator to say, hey, listen, I want to make sure that this is seen as important. You put somebody that's got a long background, right? Maybe some of the 10, 15 years with
Yep.
that person. One, they're going to know everybody, right? So you're going to be able to have that sort of effect where, hey, everyone, this is a good thing. Let's get, let's do this right. Hey, the sooner we get this over, right? We can kind of sort of appreciate that. But that helps with the cultural aspect too.
Absolutely. I highly recommend pulling the code references and having documents out there with you, whether it's the company policy, the corporate policy, or the code for your external or even your FDA checklists, because it's good for people to see that you're basing your questions off of something, and it gets them engaged. It makes them read through the document, instead of just saying, yeah, I read it, I understand it. They look for these certain things because they know that they have to prep when you come around for the internal audit, and actually walk the process, get involved with the people, learn their names, learn their job roles, learn how long they've been there. Don't just do a desktop audit. Get out there, interview employees, and observe what they're doing on a daily basis.
Yeah, and along those lines, that's a great, having those SOPs, all those documents in a repository. Hey, put those on the iPad. Use a
Yeah.
cloud-based system. You can pull them up right in line, right? So again, if you've got the binder, bring it along. But if you're sick of those binders, let us know.
So difficult to walk around with one of those big binders. You always end up falling all over the place. It doesn't work.
Yeah, it's like you need one extra hand.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, so there's some sensitivities here we should consider, though. What do we need to be careful about as you plan and execute the audit?
I think definitely being understanding of coordinating that schedule with the people, because you might have a plan and you want to go out and look at a certain space or line, but they're just having a terrible day. And it's really not the greatest time to go out there and do the audit. Even though an unannounced audit could happen at any time from regulators, you want to give them a little bit of grace and don't beat up the owners of that area, when they're already having a rough day. You want to be sure to give the same amount of respect for a planning period for that time. Allow for rescheduling. I think that one of the things that people really appreciate is managing through that time and being aware, hey, this is something we've got to get done. It's very important, but also could we move it to next week? I think also working with people on potential findings and calling them out during the audit is really important. And also listening to their opinions on what the severity level is and what the opinions of the people who are dealing with the finding with that gap are, because they're going to have the best input on the corrective action. Also, I highly suggest allow the owner of the area to read the audit report before it's finalized. When it's in that draft form, there may be something that you put in wording that they don't necessarily like the way that that is reading. They don't want it to implicate something, or they might feel a certain way about the way it was worded. So talk through any of that negativity with them, so that way you can ensure you both have a good output, you're both in agreement with that audit, and they feel good about signing off on it in the end.
Yeah, and that does give them the ability to sort of put more nuanced narrative to it, right? So yes, this happened and this is what it is. However, there may be a little bit more to it. That gives them the ability to kind of say, okay, team, here's what happened, and it gives them a little bit of time to sort of generate that narrative as well.
Yeah, and I think that's super important because what you're doing is creating a buy-in culture.
Mhm. Yep, good. So we've got the sign off, Lacey. We've got it all there. We're all done, right? So what do I do? How do I make it count?
So the most important thing is once you've got that draft report and you've shared it with the auditee or the area manager that you were with, sit down with them, have that closeout meeting, and start thinking through corrective actions. Don't just hand them the audit and walk away. You're in this together. It's an internal audit. It's not like the external. You can't just wash your hands of it. Use any pictures that you may have, include those in the final report, and help the owner through that CAPA process. Help them remember the dates that you agreed to, make sure you agree to realistic dates, and also help them to communicate what the gap was. Get out there and talk to people, help with training or whatever updates to the policy might need to happen, and ensure that they're going to be successful with closing out the audit report. That's where I've seen a lot of internal audit programs fail. It's easy to write up findings all day long, but you really want to be successful and create the culture. Well, not only you're going to be finding things, you're going to help them close that out. And they're going to have the capability to see their findings created in a spreadsheet, put the dates there, use the calendar, whatever software that you have, and make sure that you're helping them to get to success.
Yeah, absolutely. Good thoughts. Good. Well, so uh, any final thought? Like Lacey, you've got so much experience in doing these audits and helping food and beverage from small, medium, large, every like any suggestions or any final tips to leave our listeners with?
I do have a few. One of the best practices that I've seen before is using a cover page for an audit. So
Mhm.
when you finish the audit report, you use a cover page, which basically is a certificate that an audit was conducted. It puts the dates on it, it puts the names and the signature of the people who were in attendance, and you can even list out the number of findings for that quality system, but you don't have to give the detail on the findings. And this can be very helpful when you're asked for your internal audits during an external audit. So when they start to ask about your program, you can hand them the certificate and say, here is my certificate of completion. These audits were done. Here's my schedule. It shows according to which month I did the audit in. And it's a nice way to cover that requirement without having to go into the details, because let's be honest here, nobody likes to show their ugly during external audits.
It's true. And that's kind of funny that you say that, uh, organizational sort of, or what I call in a fancy terminology, information architecture on a piece of paper is really important, right? How quickly can you get through? How quickly can you show somebody the audit and the results and everything like this? I love the cover page idea too. It does kind of dress it up, and it does a good job of just summarizing. So that's cool.
I've seen it done that way. I've also seen it done using, a graph or something like from a management review policy or something. Also, one of the things I wanted to mention is I think from a culture standpoint, it's very important when people have got internal audit findings tied into their yearly goals. So when you have people who are trying to meet their goals for the year from production, from quality, putting in a no audit findings or zero repeat issues or anything like that really gives a negative connotation to the internal auditor. And so folks are going to fight you tooth and nail when it comes to their yearly compensation for whether something is an audit finding or not.
That's really interesting. You bring up something that is powerful motivational theory. So if I hear you right, Lacey, it's better to say, hey, listen, don't sort of motivate somebody on, 0 findings or 100% audits, motivate them maybe on, hey, when you find something, let's see the CAPA done in X number of days, or let's see the
Yes.
the RCA. Point to the solutions part of the issue that's going to come up, because issues are just going to come up. They always do.
That's right. They do. And the biggest, I think one of the biggest improvements I've seen on goal creation is no repeat findings, or closing out the CAPAs, like you said, within 30 to 60 days, or just meeting the deadline. So that way you're focusing on closing out the problems instead of the problems themselves.
That it's because the resolution is the part of this, right? We hear this from our friends at SQFI. It isn't, they're not interested in getting 100%. They know if you keep getting 100%, something's wrong, right? Like,
That's right.
so it's like, so the focus should be on, hey, how well do we solve it after the fact? So that's, oh, I love that, Lacey. That's a really great tip. So, all right. Well, we're a little over, I know, but this was really good, and we've got some really great questions. So I'm going to ask a few questions right
Sure.
now. First one from Jan is, what would be a major focus of an external auditor versus an internal auditor?
I think that the external auditors, when they come in, they either have a standard or a checklist that they're looking for, right? So they are just looking for those results. Do you have any major food safety gaps? One of the biggest things from my perspective, an internal auditor should be doing is finding the little things that could be preventing those bigger gaps from occurring. You're looking for the health of your quality system overall. You're ensuring, is your training working? Do your people understand that they know why they have to do these checks on the regular every hour? Do they understand why documentation practice is important? So with internal audits, if you're always auditing, you're always looking for those things, you can really build a great culture to allow people to not only be prepped and ready for when the external audits do happen, but you're preventing the larger issues from happening when you have a good, healthy system.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. They should, like you said, kind of work in symbiosis or symbiotic relationship with each other. They should be, but that's good. Thank you very much. We've got a couple more questions. This is a good one. So what, and it may be hard to sort of define, but I'm going to give it to you and see what we get. What do you recommend as the best method to conduct internal audits if we're still doing paper, pen, email, that whole thing? Is there any best practices there and tips? I think, you said cover letter, that's one. Anything else?
I think filing and organization, that was one of the biggest things for me. If I let my day-to-day take me away from getting my audit report signed off of, printed, simple things like that, I would completely lose my entire system. So I made sure that I would put my schedule printed out and signed off, so that way I could have it and look at it whenever I needed it. I would keep a folder with all of my audits, with all of my prep documents for my audits, and all of my closed out audit reports. And I would keep them for several years, because that way you can go back and reference, okay, well, what did we do last year? It's also a great training tool when you're bringing other internal auditors onto your team, which I highly recommend if you have the resources.
Yeah, good. We got time for just one last one. I think this is interesting, and I'm glad that Natasha brought this up. Where can I find a good internal audit template for process audits?
I think that it depends on what your operation is, but you can always search. The FDA actually has audit checklists that they use. Your different GFSI standards have got checklists that they use. We internally at TAG have actually created some for different companies, and it's really about, what are the things that you're always looking at? You're looking at your policy, you're looking at your training, you're looking at your GMPs of the area, and there are several examples of good checklists out there for internal auditing.
Awesome. All right. So that with that, yeah. So there's a lot of great information on atchisongroup.com. You should be able to find that there. Also, if you don't have it, get it. The tag newsletter is awesome. Safety Chain, we've got the whole recording from FSMA Friday sessions recordings and a whole content library that you can search with and get more value from. Next up, everyone, we've got FSMA Friday in October. Gosh, it's already October. Lacey, what's going on? Woo!
Yeah.
That'll be our Halloween special.
With Eric.
Yes, we're gonna be going over bioengineered food. So I'm actually super excited about that one. I love Eric's stuff. I learned so much from all of you. And Lacey, this was really fantastic. I enjoyed spending some time with you today. Thank you again for joining FSMA Friday.
Thank you so much, Aaron, and I really appreciate it. Great questions, everybody, and please contact us if there's anything we can help you with.
Great. All right. With that, we're going to say goodbye for this edition of FSMA Friday. We appreciate everyone's time, and we hope you have a great weekend. Thank you all.
Thanks.